I'm going to call the January 13th, 2021 Air Finance Committee meeting to order, and I'm going to thank Robert for reading Governor Baker's statement for us. Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Baker issued an emergency order temporarily suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Public bodies otherwise governed by the open meeting law are temporarily relieved from the requirement that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate alternative means. This meeting will be broadcast live on Channel 8 and on Zoom. The public may participate remotely by following the call-in information on the bottom of the live broadcast screen. For the Zoom meeting information relating to remote participation, please contact Cindy Knox, IT Director at cnox@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8252, or Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220 prior to the meeting. Also, in accordance with the open meeting law for the public's benefit, this is the Air Finance Committee, Wednesday, January 13th, 5 p.m., chaired by Patrick Diamond, Chairman, Vice Chairman Mark Smith, Member Lou Conrad, and Member Matt Selby are the FinCom members, and any votes will be taken by a roll call vote. And Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. Now, just so everybody knows, the reason I asked Robert to read that is my copy of it. The font is number 2, and I can't see it. So, and besides, he does this every day, so he's so good at it. Lou, I want to congratulate you on having your picture on the screen twice.
Yeah, it's a feat. But I wanted to be able to see the financials on a large monitor, so I have that going plus my laptop going. So.
Oh, I thought it was left eye, right eye thing.
No, not that confusing.
Well, good. Well, today we're going to do a reserved funds transfer. Mr. Johnson is on the top left corner of the screen here. Why don't we take care of that first? Because I'm sure, Kevin, you have other things you'd rather do than sit around and listen to us yammer. So, Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for your consideration tonight is a reserve fund transfer request for $7,500 to fund the fiscal 21 unemployment expense budget. The request is made for a couple of reasons. One, at the time we prepared the budget for fiscal 21 and prior to town meeting, it was unknown that we would have 2 valid claims that came to fruition after that time. So we have 2 valid claims, and we also have had 3 claims against this budget due to COVID-19. The town of Ayer is a reimbursable employer, and as such we pay as we go. We get a monthly invoice and we pay for that. We do not pay a percentage of our salary into the unemployment insurance account that the Commonwealth has. These individuals lost their full-time employment as a result of the pandemic and had some part-time employment with the town. And as a result, we were a subsidiary employer with some liability there. I would like to add that to prevent this from happening in the future, in some cases, we have established the Parks Department summer seasonal staff as seasonal employment under the rules for such with the Department of Unemployment, and those folks will be informed that their positions are seasonal and won't be able to collect unemployment going forward. So some measures have been taken to prevent some of these things from happening again. So with that, I would answer any questions that you might have subject to this request.
Thank you, Kevin. Are there any questions? I would entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the reserve fund transfer for the amount of $7,290.90.
I think it's 7,500.
Oh, I'm sorry, wrong line. $7,500.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Point of order. With virtual meetings, we're supposed to take a roll call vote.
Right.
You're right, Selby. Well, we'll start with a roll call.
Shelby says aye.
Pat Diamond says aye.
Mark Smith says aye.
Lou Conrad says aye.
Selby, thank you. So I would say that we can say that that motion has passed. Now, Robert, one question I have for you. Typically, reserve fund transfers in the past have required a physical signature on the bottom of the request page. If that's required, fine, I'll be happy to come over to town and do that. If not, can we do it by proxy as a result of this approval?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I'll coordinate with you. I was waiting to hear back from Lisa. If we need your signature on the form, I'll make those arrangements with you.
Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Kevin. Thanks for bringing them to us.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you all as well.
Thank you.
And you're certainly invited to hang around.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn the floor over to Robert, because most of the discussion tonight is going to be on the FY 21-22 budget periods, capital planning, and all those sorts of things, as a precursor to the joint meeting between FinCom and the Select Board later on this month. Robert?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and members of the FinCom, thank you, and again, Happy New Year, and I look forward to another successful year and successful budget cycle with the FinCom. So just a couple of upcoming dates. As the chairman mentioned, we're scheduled for Wednesday, January 27th at 6 p.m. for the first public forum on the budget. And if you recall, last year we did 2 of them. That's the plan to do again this year. The one difference is it'll be on the Zoom platform, unfortunately not in person due to COVID. At that meeting, I've asked all of the department heads to be present as well. Ms. Gabri and I will give a very brief presentation, sort of an overview of the FY22 budget major points. And then it'll be open to any questions, comments, input from the FinCom and the Select Board. And then, of course, open to the public for any questions and so forth. And hence why we want all of the department heads there as well, if there are specific questions. So that will be on Wednesday, January 27th at 6. On Tuesday, February 9th, and I, of course, will send this out to everybody, Tuesday, February 9th at 6 p.m., Dr. Malone, the superintendent of schools of the Ayer Shirley Regional School District, will present the FY22 budget to a joint meeting of the Finance Committee and the Select Board. That will also be on Zoom, but this will be she'll make a presentation. I'll get the budget to you in advance and open any questions again from the FinCom, the Select Board, and then opened up to any questions from the public. So that's sort of 2 coming attractions. Of course, I'll follow it up with emails as well. What I wanted to just briefly talk about this evening, a couple of things, and in a minute I'll have the shared screen come up with the budget that I sent to you on Friday. So where we're at in the budget process, and I just want to point out for the committee's benefit and for the public, under the town manager on the web page, there is a tab that says 2022 budget. That is going to be the repository for all of the budget-related documents. And if you go there tonight, there's the document from Friday, which was just the initial rough draft, if you will, of the FY22 omnibus budget, which we'll talk about tonight. I just wanted to give a brief overview on that. As the committee knows, it's a work in progress. As the committee knows, we'll be taking input from you, from the select board, from the public as we develop it. Each subsequent draft you'll get will be clearly indicated as said subsequent draft with the date and changes as we move forward. So I want to just talk briefly about the FY22 omnibus budget as it stands tonight. Secondly, talk a little bit about the reserve fund, which is under the FinCom, and we appreciate your support tonight on the RFT. A recommendation actually to increase the reserve fund, and I have a shared screen for that. And then lastly, take any initial questions that the committee may have. If there are certain departments that the committee may want to meet with or so forth, I'd be happy with the chairman to facilitate that, whatever the purview of the committee is. So why don't Cindy's going to help me on the shared screen. You have this budget, but I'll pull up the shared screen of the draft budget. And Cindy, can I navigate that, or you're going to be my navigator?
I think I can hand controls over to you.
Okay.
Let me see. Not that way.
You'll have to excuse the periodic ding. Our wayward Mr. Hervel is having a hard time with his Zoom.
Ooh.
Oh. Okay.
Not seeing where that is actually. Give mouse and keyboard to Robert. Robert, see if you can scroll down on that now.
Let me see.
There you go.
But Melinda says that about him all the time, so.
I think I can. It looks like.
You're moving it.
All right.
And if you
Okay.
use the annotate tool, Robert, you can emphasize things.
Okay. Which is, I'm sorry.
Should be on your toolbar, the black toolbar, maybe on the top of the screen.
Okay. So a couple of general statements and then into some of the highlights. This is obviously just the first version of the omnibus budget, number one. Secondly, as the FinCom knows, it does not include any cost of living adjustment. Per the town's policy, we'll be discussing with you, the FinCom, and then making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen probably in February or March based on a potential cost of living adjustment, which is based on a review of various metrics, the Federal Reserve, the pension website. Historically, the cost of living has been a 2% increase. Ultimately, town meeting has to approve that. So we're not quite there yet. So as far as the personnel lines in this budget, they only reflect contractual step increases, no cost of living adjustments. The other thing is we have a few contracts that expire on June 30th of 2021 that are currently in negotiation. One of them is the police patrol and dispatchers contract expires, so that is negotiations are underway. So those potential costs are not reflected in this budget at this time. And there are a couple of non-union personnel service contracts that are going to be expiring. The treasurer tax collector's contract, the DPW superintendent contract are two that are scheduled to expire, which are under negotiation. There's also going to be a change at the Department of Public Works. The superintendent of the DPW superintendent has publicly indicated that he is looking to retire at the end of this contract. So there'll be a change there. What you'll also see overall, it's pretty much at this time largely a level service budget from last year, meaning there are no new positions in the budget. It's largely, for the most part, pretty much level funded, and where you see small increases are largely driven by the contractual personnel increases. And in the middle of the screen, you'll see the reserve fund line. That's account 1132. The reserve fund, as the Finance Committee knows, it's under your purview. It's designed to take into account any unforeseen or unpredicted or unusual costs throughout the year. And over the last several cycles, as you can see, we have on here from FY17 to FY21, we have historically budgeted $150,000 for that. When I say we, Ms. Cabri, the finance manager, myself, the internal finance team, would like to recommend that the Finance Committee and the Select Board consider increasing this to $300,000. And the reason being is we remain in the COVID-19 pandemic. There's still the potential of unforeseen costs and so forth that could happen within the life of the next budget after it's approved by town meeting. And this would give us an opportunity to address any of these unforeseen or unusual costs.
Robert, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Does having a greater reserve fund make it less likely that we would have to do a transfer from stabilization funds, and it's easier?
Yes, I mean that's a fair point. That is one. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
one. The other, if Cindy, could you pop?
By the way, Mr. Harvell has decided to join us finally. Hello, Terry.
Hello, guys. I got to calm down a little bit now. I'm stressing over this.
Hi, Terry.
Hello there.
Cindy, can we just pop up the next and then come back to this one?
You sure can.
All right. So this next shared screen, and I'll send this to you so you have it. Ms. Cabri prepared this. This is the 5-year history, if you will, of the reserve fund under the FinCom, going back to, so you'll see where my arrow is at the top, budgeted 150,000. That year we used quite a bit. We unused was 15,000, and there's 134,000 was used. The next year was about half of the reserve fund was used. So the previous was 2016. This is 2017. And you can see the categories and the comments, what it was used for. Then in 2018, we ended up using, again, quite a bit with a balance of 26,000. And
That was the town council as a result of the eminent domain issue, right?
correct. And you can see with your approval tonight, we're here in fiscal year, really it says 2020, but tonight the 70, we've used about 9,300. So historically, we've never maxed out the reserve fund at 150, which is a good thing. When I first came here, traditionally it was higher. It was about 200 to 250,000. And then the FinCom about 6 years ago, and the select board recommended to town meeting to reduce it to 150, which has served us pretty well, as you can see. I mean, it was a pretty accurate amount. We're just asking for consideration to increase it to 300,000 subject to town meeting approval to add an extra proactive approach in case there are some unforeseen impacts from COVID-19. But also, Cindy, can we go back to the budget one, please? And we'll stay on that one. Also, as I want to show you, there is a we're looking for guidance on an aspect of the budget that also involves the reserve fund. And I'll just wait for that to pop up.
And I will give you remote control. You got it.
Thanks. Okay. So, real quick. So, that was the reserve fund. This is one of the areas. I'm sorry. All right. I'm just moving down. So as I'm moving down to where I want to get to show you and coming up, for example, there are still some areas where there are some potential reductions as we move forward. One of them is in the town council line, 11551. Last year was $100,000 was approved in that budget. I've submitted it with a $10,000 reduction for $90,000 for the upcoming year. But if we're looking at the trends, there's an opportunity, I think, for some further reductions there. So for the committee's benefit and the public's benefit, one of the things as we develop this budget, we look to the spending history on some of these lines, and depending on those trends, there can be adjustments. You'll see the town clerk's budget, the elections budget has been reduced because there are much fewer elections in the upcoming year than this past year. Oh, and of course, thank you for your patience. I just went past the line that I want to show you. Okay. So the first reason for our recommendation to consider increasing the reserve fund from 150,000 to 300,000 is to take into account any unforeseen due to the ongoing pandemic. The chairman mentioned, which is another point, also by increasing the reserve fund, there is the capacity to address other unforeseen matters without having to get into transferring from a stabilization account, which transferring from stabilization requires a town meeting action. The reserve fund transfer also has the appropriate checks and balances in that it requires not an affirmative vote by the FinCom as well as the select board for any departments under that. The other reason is you'll see in the budget, what I have up here is the Parks Department budget as submitted, the departmental request. And higher up in the budget, you'll see the Council on Aging's budget as submitted. And then there's the library budget. One of the things is COVID-19, of course, has impacted all town budgets, town departments to some extent. But specifically, these three departments have been greatly impacted at no fault of theirs due to COVID-19. As you know, in the Parks and Rec Department, a lot of their traditional programs were not able to happen due to the state of emergency and COVID. I think the Parks Department has been very creative and proactive in finding new ways to do things. The Council on Aging is another one that has been greatly impacted. As I said at town meeting, this current senior center is a small space. In order to do all the programs they used to do, they can't with the social distancing provisions. They've also have tried to be innovative, and the library as well. The question is, moving forward, is how some of it, if you will, is a matter of presentation. For example, on the Parks Department, on these departments, the question is, do we just fully fund them in the budget and hope for the best? I mean, none of us have a crystal ball. There's definitely encouraging news with the vaccine and other things on the horizon. But there is the chance that still some of these programs and services may not be able to happen. So the question is, do we just fund all of the things in the budget like we normally do? Or do we make reductions on certain services and programs that are COVID impacted, with the understanding that once they could be done, we could fund them then through the reserve fund? So an example, and it's just an example, why I pulled up the Parks Department budget. The first line is the lifeguard wages. And if you go over to the department request, it's $45,828. At no fault to the Parks Commission or to the town, we did not open the beach this past year due to COVID-19. The Parks Commission is optimistic that they'd be able to open the waterfront again, and they usually do that at Memorial Day, but it also remains unclear whether or not we won't be in the same situation we were last year. So the question is, and it's not a question that has to be answered tonight because we're going to talk about it on the 27th as well. The question is, do we fully fund the lifeguard wages as an example and, hope for the best and address that when it happens? Or do we reduce this, putting this fund, if you will, keeping this money marked, if you will, in the reserve fund, and then say that we were able to open the waterfront in August or something, and then get the funding at that point? So that's sort of a budget, sort of conceptual theme we want to talk to you about. That's why I wanted to start the conversation tonight, as well as the select board, is how we want to structurally approach that in the budget.
So Robert, if I may,
Yeah.
you're not suggesting that these amounts be removed from the budget because we have the tax base to cover it. What you're suggesting is that we move them from an expense line to a reserve line. If we need them, we use them. If we don't need them, they're in reserve. And either way, at the end of the year, if they're not used, it goes into free cash.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's more of a, I hate to use the term, it's more of a bureaucratic function than a practical needs function,
Right.
as I see it, right?
Yes. And
I don't have an opinion. I would open to the members to voice their thoughts. Lou, what do you think?
Yeah, I see the reserve fund as something meant for unknowns or unquantifiables or something that we don't know going in. We know COVID-19's here and we hope that it's going to be leaving us soon. To be quite honest, I would rather fund these items as though for the whole fiscal year there was going to be that need, and if there was money left over, great. But I would my preference would be to fund, and then if there's money left over, then we deal with that rather than do the kind of, as Pat you said, kind of the bureaucratic shopping kind of thing. I'd rather because one of the things I worry about is each of these departments is trying to fund their function, and I don't want them to feel handicapped or have some inability to do with their job. I want them to feel like we're behind them, we're with them, and they don't need to be concerned about this issue. I'm not talking about spending, needlessly. I'm just talking about how do we present this.
I hear you. And
Yeah.
you raised an issue that just brought a thought into my head, and that is for the next budget cycle. If we take the money out of the line and put it into the reserve fund, and then we're, say, whatever the heck normal is, but it's closer to what we think normal will be next year, and then these budget line items go up to accommodate the normal requirements that were there before, it's going to look like an extraordinary increase in budget request versus this year without there being an explanation of why it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree with Lou's synopsis of this as well.
Okay.
Mark, what do you think?
Well, so I'm going to have a differing point of view in that first I'll start with a question. If you fully budget each line item by the department and you don't need it, but something else comes up in some other department, how difficult would it be to move $45,000 from the Parks Department to the Council of Aging? Would it be easier, and I'll use Pat's term, would it be easier because it's more bureaucratic to have it in a pool where you don't have to, there's only,
You're drawing out of a pool instead of moving money from line item.
correct, and we're the ones that get to decide that. Because I could argue the other thing too is if the Council of Aging needed more than $45,000, where are you going to get that extra funds except from the reserve funds?
Good point. Can I ask Selby how Acton would do this if he's still on?
Yep, I'm here. See, we're different.
What are your thoughts?
Well, what I'm wondering is what would it take for Ayer to move to a bottom line budget versus a line item budget? So this is not a problem in Acton because we have a bottom line budget. Even at my departmental level, I know what my budget is, and I can overspend in building and underspend in planning, and it doesn't matter because at the end of the fiscal year, it's a bottom line budget. So we don't have to stick to our lines, and we don't have to do these reserve fund transfers all the time. So my overarching question is, what would it take for us to change how we budget, and can we move to a bottom line budget? And this discussion would then be moot.
Very interesting.
So to that point, if you look at the parks, we also, we're looking at the lines, that we're also a bottom line budget as well within the department as well. We're bottom line budget in Ayer as well.
For the entire budget?
For the entire omnibus, yes. But are you saying in Acton you can move from departmental lines?
Yes.
So completely different departments?
Yep.
Okay, so that's a little different than us where we can move within the departmental line. I see what you're saying. We could definitely look at that. I talk with Lisa and we can have that discussion.
Mark, it's Terry. So I understand what you're saying, but isn't that the same issue that we would have every year unless you're using the COVID as an additional nuance to that thought?
Just so I fully understand, can you just say that one more time? I'm sorry, Terry.
Yeah, so, Mark was talking about, putting the money into a different location, so it'd be easier to pull out than it would be to bring from departments, from Parks Department to the Fire Department, for example. And I don't understand why that wouldn't be, he was using the $45,000 to Department for the Aging, but isn't that the same issue we would have at any given year? With this year being the caveat or the nuance of having some potential COVID issues pop up.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But what you're saying is we're making it to increase the reserve fund transfer by $150,000. We're looking to find out what department we can pull that out of that might not need it now, so that our bottom line doesn't change. It changes by department, but not by the very bottom line
Right.
of the budget. And so you have pluses and minuses in all departments, and Parks Department's going to have a minus, but reserve fund is going to have a plus. So the net is 0. And then it gives whoever's managing the reserve fund more latitude to say which department it goes into.
So there's
Now-
one way to look at this, and that is if we leave the line items the way they are,
Mhm.
and we take an extra $150,000 off the bottom of revenue and reduce the net afterwards and move it into reserve fund, then we're not stealing from Peter to pay Paul. We're simply moving anticipated revenue into an expense line that may or may not be used.
That's another way to look at it. As we've had this discussion internally, I'm a big proponent of, obviously, as mentioned, I think earlier by Lou, I'm a big proponent of putting forth, the budget with all of the lines, as submitted by the departments. Okay. Now, we all know at town meeting, folks will ask, for example, well, I'm just using this as an example. The lifeguards. Well, you didn't open the waterfront didn't open last year because of COVID. What if it doesn't open again? Can we cut that, reduce that by $45,000? Those questions, come up in the discussion. Town meeting, as the FinCom knows, can only reduce items, lines, budgets. It can't, add to them. It's sort of a question of several have touched upon it. It's more of a display in the sense, a visual in the sense of trying to reduce the budget, but in essence, you're still increasing it through the reserve fund.
You're opening up the spend spigot a little greater.
Pardon?
You're opening the spend spigot a little wider. But it's an insurance policy. It's not a committed spend.
Correct.
Robert,
Yes.
what incentive do departments have for not spending money that they don't need? Because we all know that when, your budgeted money, it's often thought that if you don't spend it, you're not going to get it the next year, so you better spend it. So what incentive, or what's the culture in Ayer as far as if you don't need the money, you don't spend it, and that money can be used in another department?
It has improved over the years because you touched upon, when I first came here at the end of the fiscal year, there was the big spend, as they called it. Not everybody. The incentive, one of the things is that as we get towards the end of the fiscal year, we have put some internal controls on the spending. That's an excellent point, Lou, and I'm open to some further ideas and suggestions as to, what is the incentive or other mechanisms to address that. If you look overall, the budget, and this is a testament, I think, to the town, there isn't a lot of that pretty much left. The budget is pretty much right on. Obviously, personnel changes often affect those lines at times. So again, just wanted to start the initial discussion. Obviously, the document in front of you is what we've done every year in the sense it reflects all of the budget lines and the amounts as requested by the departments and in the department request line. The question did come up about, which we sort of touched upon, is this concept of, well, if certain programs that didn't happen last year aren't going to happen this year, do we reduce those lines and then if they're able to happen or when they're able to happen, fund them through the increased reserve fund. Definitely not required to do that, but wanted to have that discussion and get some feedback and input from you and from the select board, which we'll initially hear about this on Tuesday. That aside, I think also, though, not to lose sight of the main reason for increasing the reserve fund is to sort of prepare for the potential for some unforeseen or unexpected impacts as this continues.
From a point of perspective, I don't have a problem increasing the reserve fund because fortunately we have enough of a revenue overage that it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. And if we spend it, we have less free cash, okay? We're not going to waste it. So I think it's fine. Why not? What do we have to lose? And we leave the line items the way they are.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
You know, and my thought on that same line is that if you leave the line items the way they are, generally it can, if you're looking at not spending it, it's only going to go down.
Yeah.
Rather than up.
Yeah, it falls to the bottom, which is free cash, so that's a good thing, right? But if we need it, it's there, and the poor folks that run these departments don't feel artificially hamstrung because some of their money got put into a pot somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be a little oversimplification, probably is, but
Yeah, I'm also for increasing the reserve from 150,000 to 300. My only, and I'm going to use this word advisedly, but the only thing is I don't want us to lose our discipline and have that become a slush fund. So
agreed 100%.
I don't want to lose the discipline and say, oh, well, we can just use the reserve fund for that, and we can use the reserve fund for that, and that's just not a disciplined approach. So that, and that's not our approach, but that's just my only concern about it.
So that means we take the word slush and small characters out between the line items?
Through the chair, Lou, excellent point, agreed. And I mean, it's also important to note that the reserve fund, there has to be, as it's set up, the request usually has to be at a point where the present budget balance is very close to zero, not necessarily entirely. It has to be obviously for extraordinary or unforeseen reasons. It has to go through the finance committee publicly, and in most cases also the select board publicly as well. And so I think we have a good system on the reserve fund but it's a good point to stress the discipline piece of it.
So Robert, would we want to stipulate for the budget purposes that for this particular budget cycle, because of COVID, we're increasing it to 300 and the goal or the plan later for next or subsequent budgets is to move it back to 150? Or do we plan to leave it at 300?
No, that's an excellent point. I think it's because of the pandemic. That's a good point. So being the optimist, it'd be 300,000, say for FY22, with the hopes that when we sit down with you to develop the FY23 budget, we're going back to 150.
Yeah, COVID becomes remember when.
Correct. And I mean, hopefully you'll get this, I'll send this to you. I had the other screen up. You'll see that historically over the last 5 years, 150 number has been a very good number.
That's been adequate.
Yeah, adequate.
Yeah.
This is more of a precautionary measure for the 300,000, and I appreciate the initial support on that. Hopefully we don't have to use it, and hopefully we again fall where we usually do, about maybe 120,000 or so from the reserve fund. But it's I think that's a good point to stress, publicly. The caveat is this is a COVID sort of specific measure. The second thing is, I think, and I know Lisa isn't here this evening, and she's open either way. I think that we should move in the direction of keeping the budget line items as we always have, without getting into, reducing and then coming to the reserve fund. I mean, is there any objection to that? I mean, we wanted to present, both options in full disclosure and for discussion for folks, to weigh in on. But it sounds like it may just end up being more confusing.
I think we should budget for what the departments think they need
Yeah.
and have a reserve fund specifically for that, a reserve for unanticipated expenses.
Okay.
I don't know, Lou, what do you think?
No, I'm in agreement with that. But I'm interested to hear what Mark and Selby, Terry think, because I think Mark and
Yeah.
Selby were thinking.
I was slightly under a different impression of the way the conversation was going. My thought was to be able to justify the increase in the reserve fund. You wanted to reduce the departments. And so I can follow that logic of just moving who's managing that money for what reason. But now I understand that keeping the budgets by the departments for what they need. And I understand about increasing the reserve fund, which means it's overall a general increase, but as Pat said, our revenues can support it. So I'm good. I thought it was more along the lines we were trying to justify something, but our justification is we can remain status quo in our, so to speak, in our departments. We can increase reserve fund because we have the money, and it's not going to go away because we're increasing that for potential risk maybe down the road. So
Thanks, Mark. I like the way you put that.
I'm good.
Selby, what are your thoughts?
I would like to increase the reserve fund to the 300 and keep the departmental budgets as submitted. We're approving a budget that's going to start in July 1. Hopefully by July 1, people will be vaccinated, and departments will be operating as they should be. So that's my thought.
Agreed.
Harry, what do you think?
I'm yes and yes on both.
Okay. Well, Robert, I think you know our points of view now.
No, and I appreciate it, gentlemen, and I appreciate having these discussions. And like I said, nothing formal now, of course. I'll go to the select board on Tuesday, which I am anticipating will be along the same lines of increasing to 300,000 on the reserve fund, given the pandemic, with the understanding that we're going to get out of this pandemic, and when we do next year's budget, hopefully we'll be getting back to the 150. And then also put what the departments need and move forward. And Selby makes a good point too, that this budget goes into effect July 1st of 2021. By then, with the vaccine and so forth, we should be moving more towards stability. Lastly, and I appreciate everybody's input, because part of that is, so what I put on the screen at the bottom on this screen, so the document you have, at the bottom you have the total omnibus. Now this is a rough draft. So you see the FY21 budget was 15.6 million. The departmental request as it stands in this draft is 16.3 million for a $726,000 increase over last year, or 4.65%. Part of the thing with what we just finished talking about was, though you're increasing the reserve fund, if you reduce in these other departments, it's sort of playing with, and I hate to use the word playing with, but a different way of representing this number here. A couple things I want to point out. One, this 726,000 assumes 150,000 on the reserve fund, which we had last time. So obviously that will go up. But on the budget, and I'm having difficulty scrolling it, under the regional dispatch line, there's $200,000 that is in that was put in that budget that is actually a state grant that we receive. So in essence, we have to pull that 200,000 out the way it was submitted. So this number is obviously the number that's going to continue to change, and our goal is hopefully to continue to change it in a downward direction.
It's also like the health insurance budget went up by 209,000.
Correct. And I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Chairman, because as this committee knows, there are some things we have some placeholders on, and this is one of them, health insurance, which is right here, the 208,000. That assumes a 12% increase. That's a placeholder from Kevin. We'll get the rates in February. We're hopeful that it will be less than that, and it has been, so that would hopefully go down. The other insurance line items also have placeholders, and we usually get those premiums again in February or March. So those are sort of some, if you will, variables in the budget. But one of the big ones for tonight is the regional dispatch. There's a considerable that was put in the omnibus by the police department, but that's going to be covered by a grant, and we get that grant. We've been getting that grant every year, so there's about 200,000 that needs to be worked out of the budget.
Which the grant will cover.
Correct. So for the purposes of tonight, if you will, that number that's 726,000 would be 526,000. But if we increase the reserve fund to 300,000, which is the correct thing to do, I believe, given the circumstances. So that number on the bottom will continue to change.
I think that's fair.
So that, I appreciate the time you've given me, and I'm going to stop at this point. If there are any initial questions from the committee, and as always, if you have questions, as I say, during the week, do not hesitate to contact Lisa or I, and we're also happy to come back to any future meetings.
Robert, do you mind if I go around the committee and ask the individuals if they have any further comments?
That's fine, Mr. Chair. Sure.
Selby, what's your point of view on tonight?
We can't hear you.
That means he's agreed.
I was on mute. No, I'm good with the budget. The 4.65%, what I guess I have a question is where the schools are going to come in with their increase. I guess we don't know that yet, is my guess. And yeah, I'm happy to be increasing the reserves and also to be fully funding the departmental requests.
Okay.
Terry, what's your thoughts?
Okay, I'm not muted. I just went looking to see first. So no, I'm good with this. I've heard some good information out there, and I apologize if I missed this with my struggles to get in here.
Well, you get 2 demerits for being late. That's okay.
Yeah, no idea how stressed I was getting. I was like, where is this? But so just to back up for a second on, say, the parks with the lifeguards. So we did not spend all the money that was projected for them, and so that was pulled into free cash.
It will end up in free cash if it's not spent.
Correct.
Okay, so how much do we anticipate, if any, from other departments with something like this that did not or will not potentially get spent? I mean, the significant reason behind this, we didn't use lifeguards, so.
Yeah. So excellent question. So in addition to the parks, in the Council on Aging, the senior center, there are some things there that may not be able to happen or may not happen initially. So there's another department. also the library. But the challenge with the library is in Massachusetts, you have to have a minimum local contribution that you spend. So you have, in order to get library aid. So that's a little trickier. But those were the three departments since COVID started that had the most significant impact on their programs.
Lou, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'd like to actually start off by asking a question to Robert. So the column that's titled FY 2021 actuals, is that just for the first 6 months of the fiscal year?
Correct.
So if there wasn't a seasonal kind of variability, then the run rate for the first 6 months would be a 12 million or so for the year?
Correct.
All right. So my only comment, and it's more anecdotal, is just the healthcare insurance. Because of COVID-19, I'm sure you've all heard the same thing, but their elective surgeries have fallen off the map, and so it seems like premiums are if there's an increase, it's a very small increase. Historically, it's been much higher than what people are seeing with premiums coming due. So hopefully that number will be less than you're even projecting there.
Agreed.
Lou, given that thought, do you think that once this craziness is done and we get back to whatever normal is, and elective surgeries start to go back up to the level they were, there's going to be a surge in in those that have been kind of waiting and waiting and waiting? You think that maybe in FY 23 we could see a big jump in that?
I'm not in the insurance business, but that would seem to be reasonable to me. I think there's going to be a surge or a jump in a lot of things. I think we're going to be looking to travel a little bit more than we did this past year too.
Yeah, I'm tired of being in the house. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I'm good. Thank you very much. All my questions and concerns were answered by everyone's discussion.
Well, I want to thank my finance committee members for being so engaged and having such great ideas. And Robert, I want to thank you for your participation in bringing this to us. Hopefully we've been helpful, and we look forward to continuing to be as we go forward in the budget year.
Thank you.
And does that bring us, if that brings us to the conclusion of the meeting, I will be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. Happy New Year.